So I want to talk about overlapping opaque lines in Flash. Something that I've noticed is that a lot of people don't even know that this is possible. But before we can talk about the opacity, we have to understand how the brush strokes in Flash work. By default, each line you draw will overlap all previous lines, and each line is based off of its color properties. If I draw over a line with different color properties, in this case red and blue, the blue line will take priority, and if they're on the same layer, the red line gets cancelled out. We can see this if I delete the blue line or by moving either of the red lines. If I cross over a line with the same color properties, the two lines are joined together. If I move it, you can see that now they're both connected to each other. Incidentally, we can get around this by having slightly different color properties. Changing the color by a single value treats it as two different objects, even though it visually looks the same. I like to do this whenever I want to paint a black color on a character, so it doesn't connect the color to the outline. This way, if I ever want to, I can go back and change that color without the entire thing messing up. Now, if they're each on different layers, we know that each line exists under the previous line and that nothing is canceling out anything when we draw. Anyway, the opacity of each line is determined by its alpha level. However, the big difference in Flash is that the alpha level is part of the color properties. This means if I draw a line with 50% alpha and I cross over it with the same 50% alpha, they will still connect together because both lines have the same color properties, just like before. And if I draw over it with a different color at 50% alpha, it still cancels out the older lines, even though you should be seeing through them. So the way that opacity works in Flash is that you see through any layers below the opacity. So if I draw on a layer underneath this line, we will in fact see through it. But we don't have to draw every brushstroke on the new layer, because we can group them as separate objects. This allows us to start placing objects behind or in front of each other, without having to put them all on individual layers to do so. If you're unfamiliar with grouping, it's essentially like making each object a symbol, but without saving the symbol in the library. And if you're unfamiliar with symbols, by creating a symbol, what we've done is both created a drawing that can't be edited in this timeline, but we've also added that drawing to the library. So if we make a copy of it, whenever we go into the symbol to edit it, it will auto-update all of the instances of the symbol. This is used very often for character animation. So if we group our lines, we can keep them on the same layer, but stop them from overriding each other. But we don't have to go in and individually group them either. If we turn on object drawing, every single line that we draw gets immediately added to its own group, and this is available all the way back to Macromedia Flash 8. So since all of these lines are individually grouped, I want to point out how they're different from the lines that we've been used to. If I draw a square and I make each one of its sides an individual line, I can actually go back and drag one of the sides away, which means that this shape is really not connected. So if I try to fill the inside of the square a color, it won't let me, because technically this isn't a closed shape. I can also erase the line, but if I try to move the top half of what's left, both pieces of that original line will move, because they were initially in the group of that original line. So the last thing we can do is remove the lines from their group, which turns it back into the original type of default line that we're used to. There's a couple of ways to do it. I usually do break apart or Control B, Command B on a Mac. But notice that if I break apart the opaque lines, they all merge into a single opaque shape again. So that's the basics of using opacity in Flash. I see a lot of people that want to get into animation and that they're used to sketching things out in any drawing programs or even on paper. So if you're someone that really wants that in Flash, hopefully this video helps you out.